And hello and welcome everybody for this wonderful, wonderful episode of Zest for Life, where we're celebrating the life and the journey of our beautiful, wonderful, so rich and such an interesting master person, our dear Antonia Lyons. So welcome, Antonia. I'm really glad that you made it, that you've actually decided to take initiative and go for it. And here we are. So would you want to say a few words about yourself and just so that the audience get to know you a little bit better and where you come from and who you are?
Hi everyone. It's lovely to see you all. For those I've met before, and for those who are new to this space, hi, and thank you, Alexis, for having me. So I live in London. I've been in London for nearly 30 years now, which is a long time. I'm originally from Italy, and I've been on what people like to call a spiritual path all my life, really. And then at some point, I walked away from it. And I wanted to see things for myself. And actually that meant that things started to go in a very different way. And I started to see things about myself, but also I started to remember how things were when I was growing up. And so that actually led me to write my first book, the day I found God in a pub. And it brought me here to this present moment. So
and like reading that book, like I just enjoyed it. It was so sensual. And what it struck me, like how true it is that a person can describe an experience with so few words, because it's kind of like a collection of short stories. And yet when you read those short stories, I felt like I was really transported into your experience and into and even to smelling and tasting, like when you were what you were describing and kind of imagining the people. They became so real, all of those people that you talk about. So you really have this incredible talent about writing and the way you write. And this is not, it's not like it's not very usual, that people have this kind of incredible way of expressing. And so I'm really glad that you are writing, and also that you've started writing, a new book. Like just before we started, we were sort of chatting a little bit and laughing how, when we do these things that are public and they're for other people, it changes everything. Because whenever you sort of announce something, or whether you decide to write a book like this, you start to really experiencing and testing yourself in those very things that you're going to write about. So your week, you said, was quite funny, not in a funny way, but but you've had a lot of very testing experiences.
Yes. And so this, I actually had to really acknowledge this after I wrote my first book. It just suddenly came up that, okay, I've written this lovely book, and whether anyone reads it or not, but the words are there. And I suddenly started to notice that things were happening in my life in a way that it was almost like life herself was asking me, do you really believe that God is everywhere? Do you really believe that everybody is God? And so dynamics started to unfold, sometimes in quite, I wouldn't say dramatic, but, definitely trying. And then with this second book, it's almost like life is asking me, okay, so what are you offering to people now? What are you offering to the readers? Because quite often, and I'm sure writers or authors can relate to this, we like our words. We get enamored with our words, but words are alive, really. It's live energy that you put out there, on a piece of paper, or as you talking to people. And it's almost like whoever writes has the responsibility to really share something that ultimately is not about themselves. The trick is to really transcend your own story and then share in a way that everybody can relate. And for me, that is, I don't have rules, but that is my thing. Unless I am 100% sure that someone else will be able to relate to that story without thinking about me, I don't want to be there. You know, it's this, it becomes this story, because ultimately our own story is the story of everybody else's. You know, that's the truth. You know, we're only, we do share one story, and then we play out in our own unique way. So unless after that's happening, I don't write. I just, you know, I leave it there, and then I see what comes up. So.
And like when I was reading your stories, you know, like what came, what was really apparent to me is how beautifully, like the how you relate to people that you meet, you know, all of these often strangers on the street, and you know, very often, like what I find, me included, that so often we kind of think that the grass is greener on the other side, you know, like, and so we're always looking for sometimes, and the world kind of tries to get us to look out and to look somewhere else, that life is better somewhere else. But this sensuality, this being like in your presence and with people and the situations where you're at, that's where all the wisdom is. And when I was reading through your stories, I could even sort of see, you know, the particles, you know, how when you're sitting in a pub and you see the particles of dust in that light, you know, how you sometimes have that light shining, just that's how real what your storytelling is for me. So it shows that you've lived it, and that you live embodied within your life, you know, and that's one of the hardest things really to do, to really be acceptant of life. Like you mentioned, you know, how we sort of guilt trip ourselves and we're the hardest, each one of us can be the hardest judge of ourselves. And like when you also realize how other people appreciate your work, you can kind of then start to appreciate your own work as well. Do you find that as well, that it's
Yeah, I do. I feel even more so now. I feel that I wouldn't even call it responsibility, but there's a sense of wanting to make sure that I am as authentic as possible, and I offer the distillation or whatever I've experienced myself, coming from a place of understanding that, you know, my story is not this story. Everybody brings onto the table their own story, but ultimately you will see that they're all the same. There's always the same underlining of, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be happy? Is life going to be kind to me? Ultimately, we all want to be okay, really. And when we get fixated on our story and we make it us our identity, that's when we get stuck and we don't listen to other people. And we miss, as you say, the little particles in the pub because we're so absorbed. So I feel that writing is helping me really to go beyond my story, because up to that point, up to when I first started to write my book, it was nice words, or I'm moving beyond my story. But was I really, you know? And it's only when I started to think, because the title came to me a long time ago, and I sat with it many, many, many years. And it was only during COVID when really I just looked at myself and I thought, okay, I've been on this path forever and blah, 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 you know, wow. But how is this helping me? What am I doing with my life, you know? Because it's amazing, you know, you get on a course, you give your money to someone, and then you really think, oh yeah, I found the thing and we're going to be all right. But it was very conceptual, I found. And then things started to click during COVID. And I'm very fortunate because I'm very supported at home. So I think that really makes a difference. It allows me to move and to screw up at times. quite badly. But you know, I had that space, that opportunity to move and experiment. And then, you know, I started to think, okay, things are not feeling the same as before. All these people I've been following all my life just sound the same. And I started to think about the people I met along the way. And I saw how each one of them showed up in the same way. They all had a way to show up in life just as they were. These people had not been on my same path. They hardly knew what I was talking about, to be honest. They couldn't even relate to me. But they had their own wisdom, and there was no apology about it. My husband, who you know, I write in the book about, actually more than everybody else. And I always looked at him like this sort of mountain, you know, very, very grounded in this daily life. You know, there's no apologies, there's no guilt, and there's just him. And so was everybody else in the book. So yes, for me, definitely going back to your question, I feel like now the more I write, the more I'm asked to really offer, you know, a story that people can relate to, can see themselves into.
Yeah, because like wherever you are in the world, really, or whatever language that you speak, or wherever you come from, and maybe some people can't really put words to that, but you know, we're all kind of really, what is the into like, what is the meaning of life? What is happiness? How do I get happy? Why am I here? You know, there's all of these questions, and there are many different ways to answer that. And some would say, like, there are certain questions that you don't even ask. And, you know, for a while, I kind of thought, well, that's weird. Why would you not ask? Why am I here? Kind of thing. But some of the things there are no answers, you know, like I kind of like to listen to all different kind of people, you know, from the scientists to philosophers to all. And everyone has got their opinion, and everyone's got their perspective and interesting things to say, but there don't seem to be any answers. So how have you been tackling these kind of things? Like, you know, when people say, what is happiness? How do I be happy? Is there such a thing even?
I think that really just writing the book actually allowed me to be really real about these questions, because I'll give you an example. I have a dear friend of mine whose child is disabled. And it was a bit of a shock for all of us, for us friends at the beginning, because, you know, these are very active people, you know, a very active couple. They used to go off and do things, and suddenly life is completely different. And I remember sitting in a pub, and my friend at the time, she had started to open up to whatever I grew up with, you know, and up to the point that she had been completely different, you know. She was a bit of a party girl and very bubbly, lovely, but quite removed from what you and I, you know, have known all our life. And she came to me and she said, Ella, could you please talk to my husband and just say your words, say anything that, you know, will make him feel better about this. Because in that moment, he was actually really struggling. This was a guy who just decided to get on with the situation in his own way, very human, very, you know, there wasn't anything fancy. And then I was sitting at this in this pub, and I came up. I remember to this day the most idiotic thing ever. Things started to come out of my mouth, and my husband just turned pale, and you should have seen this guy's face, and just stared at me like, what the hell? And I just kept on going, and I'm inside. I was aware of just talking like really rubbish, but it's the kind of thing you will tell someone, oh, you know, this is happening to you because there's this reason, and, you know, it's part of a bigger picture. But you're not meant to say that. You have to trust the other person enough to be able to go through that situation in their own unique way with their own wisdom. And for me, that day was a turning point, because I just thought, whatever I'm trying to do here, whatever words I'm trying to offer, they sound fake. They're not real, because these are people whose life is never going to be like it was last month, the month before. Their life is a new life they may not be able to embrace, accept, do in a different way right now in this moment. In this moment, you should just be able to enjoy the time with them, have a drink, talk about anything else but the situation without trying to make it better. And that's how I then started to really write. Really, after that day, I really sat down and I really thought, what am I about? What am I offering to others? Because if it's only pretty words I'm offering, then no, I don't want to do this anymore. So it was really important, and I thank God that actually happened. So yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like in you, this kind of, there is this seriousness in you, and the very, very deep, like at the very deep level, like you search for what is the right thing to do, you know, and you don't stop before you actually find it. Before you find something that you feel comfortable with, because there are so many solutions given to us, you know, like from the advertising industry, from the politicians, from science, from school, from parents, from ancestry, all of the solutions. But I find that this real authentic journey really is about finding something that you can say, yeah, I can live with that. You know, like when you come to some kind of understanding, you know, because some of the things are just so full of layers and meaning, and you can look at them in such a different way. And then you look at other people and you think, okay, so that's how they think, but that doesn't really sit right with me. So all of these difficult situations and questions that people have to contend with, you know, because life is so full of challenges, and it completely turns you over, and you end up where you didn't think you'll end up, and things like that, you know, and you end up a person or doing things that you really have no control over sometimes, you know, because deeper parts of you come. And then at the same time, you know, there is that truth also. Okay, I am a creator. I have met God. I have met that part of me that is what, let's say, I call soul. And yet, so how does it all fit? All of these things, because, you know, clearly a lot of the time for people, life isn't going as to what they think it will be going, you know. So like there's just so many things to find some kind of reason or a reasonable way, some way of, okay, so yes, I believe now this for now, and I'm okay with that. Do you find like this kind of process in you as well?
Yeah, just don't make things definite. Like, you know, right now, this is helping me. It's like little stepping stones, but we're so engrossed in the final bit that we really all believe somehow, especially you know, most of the time people on spiritual path, you know, they're going somewhere. And as they walk, they don't even see the way, you know, and the way is paved with so many incredible experiences and people, and I'm sure you experience the same. Suddenly you realize that the getting somewhere is actually making you quite depressed, quite ill at times, you know. It's another stress that you're adding on top of what life is giving you anyway. And life is meant to give you challenges, because it's only, I believe, through challenges that you transcend yourself. And so for me, especially during COVID, I had this sense that that time was making us all real. Whether we agreed with the way we're going in the world, what happened, how things were that way, it doesn't matter. Each one of us made our own choice, fine. But I felt like during that time, and that's when I decided to start writing the book, even though it was only 3 years later that I actually really started to type the words. It was a sense of, oh God, you know, that there's not going to be like hiding behind things anymore now. You know, a life is asking us to really be real. And that's why I think COVID came as a shock for all of us. And, you know, people who had been on a certain path perhaps were grounded enough to understand the messiness of life. And then, you know, they just go, okay, whatever. But they go on with the situation, and then, you know, they discovered new things. But people who weren't prepared, there was that discomfort. And that's when they started to reach out for things. And it's quite interesting to watch these people, because I call them the new spiritual ones. And they like, oh, please give me anything that makes me feel better. And it's not like that, because I just think people really think if I do A, B, and C, then I'm going to get there and I'm going to feel better and life is going to be amazing. And, you know, it's all about the law of attraction. And life is not that straightforward. It really is not. You know, silly things when you think of, I've been doing so much healing and I live in a certain way and I do certain things, and then suddenly you get cancer. What have I not done enough of? Where did I go wrong? No, you just got cancer because this is part of your journey, and it doesn't mean anything. And I have actually met people who would be very suspicious of situations like that, you know, quite judgmental. Oh, well, they got cancer because obviously they didn't do that enough. That's cruel. That's really cruel, you know. And
it's very immature, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very immature way
but if you see, even in the spiritual circles, sometimes people experience something for themselves, and suddenly a light bulb goes off for them. And then they expect everybody else around to feel the same, but they won't be able to, because people understand the life at the level of their own consciousness. They know what they know, and they don't know what they don't know. They can't. And so that's why in the end, even spiritual circles, no matter the good intentions behind them, they just become breeding ground for, you know, fakeness and empty words. They're very pretty words, but they ultimately they don't serve anyone. So yeah, I feel like right now there's a shift in people who've been walking a certain path to really be as real as they can, and really understand that just because life is doing everything, it doesn't mean anything. It is not that you're not doing enough or you're doing too much of. It's just part of their journey. But it also, in my case especially, it's made me compassionate. It's made me understand that people can actually really suffer. That their suffering is real. Their pain is real. And you're not going to change that. It's for them to do if they so choose. They may not be able to. I think for people in our field, that's quite a challenge to accept, because you want to help, because you want to share your journey. Hey, I've discovered this, and you know, surely it's going to help you. Well, maybe it won't, you know.
And in this, if you do work in this role, you know, you do I find a lot of different, you know, such wonderful variety of people that in such different kind of situations. And you know, like it's just important to be with them, and I think hear them. Like for me, I've changed a lot in this way, because initially I would just talk a lot, you know, because like you said, you think, okay, it helped me, this helped me, this helped me, this helped me, so maybe this will help you. And like you said, it doesn't, because you mentioned this word transcendence, you know, and transformation and things, and this means these words mean very different things to what, let's say, when we go into, you know, naive into the spiritual journey or awakening or whatever, because we think, well, we transcend and transform something, meaning that that something that was painful before or I didn't like in my life is just going to be gone. But very often it's actually that thing is always still there. It is just that our relationship to it has changed. That's what very often transcend or transform means, like that you can see, okay, the gold that it was. And sometimes some things don't even have this gold. The gold is just that you learn how to live alongside it and still have, not happy is a weird word, but just to have this sense of well-being and joyfulness, even if there are all those things around still in life. Is that something similar that you experience? Like that's so different now, my understanding about these things, than what it used to be.
Same here, very much so right now, actually, because, going back to my friend, you're not going to change the situation. That child is, she won't have a life like you will hope any child will have. She will not, but, and it's been a joy for me as a friend to watch these two human beings I'm so close to, finding their own way through this, creating space. And that's what I found that transcending ultimately helps you to do. You create space around something that perhaps cannot change, and in that space, and then you move. You come up with different things that can actually support you. But there are your own things, and they may not work for other people. And I think that's one thing that possibly you miss when you are so engrossed in, try and learn different things that help you navigate life. They, follow people who, tell you that they can help you mastering your life. Do you ever master life? Can you master life? For me, mastering life means that, hey, today is a shit day and you ain't going to get any better. It's a shit day. Go to bed. Like literally, go to bed. Watch a bit of TV. Perhaps if you can, have a bit of a breathing time. Just be there quiet. But quite often the pain is so overpowering, so overwhelming that you cannot even do that. So I would say just go to bed. Like, I think it's the narrative that comes with us in situations like that actually stops us from even questioning, what do I need right now? Because I can assure you that no matter all the things I do, the things I've learned, there are times when watching a movie is the best thing I can do in the moment, And then I feel a bit more open. And then I can decide whether to go to bed or go for a walk or read a book or, it's creating that space your own way, but you've got to trust yourself. And I think we stuck in the place where we're thinking other people know better than us. And that's where we literally get stuck. And then we get resentful when those things don't work. But they're not our thing. They can never work. They can only take you that far. But, ultimately, you have to make stuff your own. That's what I've been finding now more than ever. And there's no hiding from that. There's no like, oh, well, but so-and-so said this, and I should be able to do this other thing. They know my thing. I heard about them. I paid the money to learn that, perhaps. I paid loads of money. But they know my thing. That is not my experience. So.
Yeah, and this kind of wisdom, like it's paved, like you come by it by hard experience sometimes, and by certain knocks and things, and by just standing in your own, like, that sovereignty that we speak of, that it really has to do about this is owning your own stuff, and it's about walking your own path, and sometimes that is on your own, and sometimes that is as part of, with friends or whatever. But authenticity is becoming more and more of who you really are, and who you really are is very different than anybody else. Like we do have an underlying samenesses that we can relate to people, but each one of us are also at the same time so unique, that the more real you are, the more authentic you are. And you can kind of inspire people or be there for them and give them space. But everyone, yes, has to, walk their own path and walk their own, resolve their own issues. There really isn't any other way. And I find that sometimes, like, when people can do a lot of things, and that can be a wonderful thing. It gives people different, feeling of companionship, feeling of belonging, and nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, it also can be just another addiction covering, the real stuff, because I found that it doesn't matter how much wishful thinking I did, especially people that really are into awakening. We do have, many of us have difficult histories, with trauma, with PTSD and all of these kind of things. And there is kind of this feeling that these things will just magically go away. But when you really stop and look, you realize, wow, I've been magically trying to get these things go away for year after year after year, and my life is not changing in a way that I would find it more and more satisfying. But instead, I just keep wanting to do more and more, waiting for the next hit and the next hit, until you wake up and you realize, hang on a minute, this is just covering all these underlying, trauma things. And it doesn't matter all the nice spiritual words. You have to deal. That's what I find. I had to deal with the real stuff, the real effects these things have had, even just like anyone else that wasn't on this called spiritual path, like if we had, let's say, traumatic past or whatever, we have to deal with those things, because those things, they do affect us. And yes, the spiritual things can do this. It's like this kind of sacred oil. It oils things up a bit, like I find it much more smooth and I don't know what words to use, or even finding the courage to actually stop and look at them. But stop and look at them, I had to. There's no way, there's no real easy way. And that's fine. If someone finds this real easy way to get through it, I would be happy to know it. But I so far haven't found. And has that been kind of your experience as well?
Definitely. And I just think it's such a humbling thing, because you think, I was reflecting on this just this morning. I was talking to my husband about my book, actually, and it was interesting to know what he thought about God, and if he thinks that we're all, can he sense the divine in all the people he interacts with. And I suddenly remembered that as a kid, there wasn't any distinction for me about this life and that life. It just was one. And I remember very vividly the excitement I felt all the time about being in this life, this big life. And life was hard. My parents were extremely young. It wasn't like, probably was quite challenging for them to bring me up. And then my sisters came along quite soon. By the age of 22, my mother had 3 kids. It's quite, my dad was 23, so quite intense. But I couldn't sense that, because for me, it was just an incredible adventure. I was very intuitive. I used to have visions and premonitions, and so I couldn't really sense the hardship, because for me, the hardship was meant to be part of it. And it's only when I started to get older and things got really tough in our family, it's only then that I started to sense a distinction, like a fraction, like I'm here and that's there. And I really started to suffer, because I completely lost that excitement, that that acceptance of life just as an amazing adventure, no matter what was happening around. It was, you know, and that's how I realized that nothing ever defined me. Whatever was happening around me, it could never define me because it was part of life. But it's only as I grew older and I decided that it wasn't safe to be the way I was, that I had to be more like the people around me, that I started to suffer really. But then, you know, you going back to what you were saying, then you start walking this spiritual path, and you come, you know, you meet along the way other people who are very similar to you, but that you're all carrying the same wounds, you know. And the thing is, I sense that what happens is that we all forget that at some point in our life, we're all experiencing that excitement, that magic, you know, wow, we're here, oh my God, this is so amazing. It's almost like we need to forget that because it's not safe, because otherwise people will look, you know, look us up somewhere, just throw the keys away. And then it becomes really hard. It becomes just really hard, but also trying to be more spiritual, trying to open up, trying to find ways to master life. It just becomes a burden purely because you moved away from what was there all along. We came with that. That cannot, you know, be taken away. We decided to leave it behind, but it's there. And so, yeah, I'm finding this very much right now. That I could go on and learning new things, but ultimately, there's always going to be that distinction of the human and the soul. The human, there's a lot of talking about human and soul, and how do I get the soul here? But it's one. This like, even as you pay your bills. That's part of your magical experience, your incredible experience. It cannot be taken away. The soul is still part of that. In fact, the soul is experiencing, you know, itself paying the bills. It's great here in this life. So I found now more than ever that there's a certain, not resistance, but a certain discouragement every time I hear I hear people saying, oh, it's no, I haven't done enough. I don't feel my soul just yet. I'm not, you know, it's almost something you have to lesson all the way back to you. And it just doesn't sound right anymore. I don't know how to explain this, but yeah.
Yeah, because very often, and I wonder if this is, you know, this, we must be taught that somehow along the way, because I find a lot of people have this, and they will say, oh, yes, it is this, but it will be even better when I can feel the soul more, or something like that, you know, like it's kind of like putting it off. And this is that thing where you put off that experience, or that experience of the soul. Not that the soul is not there, whatever we call this, you know, but it's always here, like you say, but it's just like making this kind of barrier, you know, putting it off. But like when you were explaining your beautiful story, you know, how you're experiencing childhood, I was wondering whether that is a very sort of almost every person's story, because it has to do, you know, how before we have mind, we just are, like, you know, the little babies, they just are, they are full of emotion, they're fully present, they're fully in the now moment. And then as a human being, we then start developing mind. And it is once we start identifying with mind more and more and more, that's when that separation then becomes even bigger. Because a lot of the people, let's say different cultures, they don't put so much emphasis on the mind. Or for example, let's say if they always live you know, as farmers, because then they're connected with the land. There's that deep, incredible, peaceful silence that you can feel in them, that space, you know, that they have. But especially in a modern world, you know, we start to, as a human being, you go into your mind so much, and then you just identify with the mind, especially, you know, if you go through the education process, which makes you into a person that is useful to employees, that is useful to society. And to be useful to society, you have to let go of your natural self, because the culture, this is that this dichotomy, this challenge of the modern culture, because to be civilized, you have had to bury your real self, in deep in you, and identify with the mind so much. And then once you're in the mind, you're separate, because it's just the nature of how the mind works. And you're either in the future or in the past, but you're not here present. And that coming, and that's why this coming back to self, to presence, is such a huge step. Like, it was the hugest step for me, because then that's when I kind of realized, wow, so my soul is present right here, right now. It always has been, but I haven't been here. And that's where kind of that feeling of that I'm separate, then the soul comes. But I also find it very handy, because you it's easy to teach, when you're teaching or talking about it, you cannot put words to certain experiences. But I wonder whether that's that separation, going away from self, is when we become so much into our mind.
Definitely, and it's something I'm experiencing actually right now, and it's quite interesting, because, as you said, we leave. Our soul is always here, but we literally leave our body, because quite often it's not safe to be here in the body, or like in the present moment. So we associate being present with being unsafe, really. But then once you find your own way to come back into the body, then those fears, that pain body, can no longer exist. It has to go. Whether you like to call it aspect, or pain body, or whatever, you can call it whatever you want. But the truth is, it really feels at times like you're haunted, like there is something, taking ownership of your body almost. And it's only when you bring your attention back that that thing has to go. It can no longer be there. But it takes a long time. But even being aware of the fact that it's like, hey, I'm not here. I'm somewhere out there. That's amazing awareness that most people don't even know. So it actually took me a very long time, because I completely got trapped in my mind, like, as I'm growing up, because of different things that were happening around me, to those, to the others around me. I just completely, I just went. And so the mind really took charge, but to the point that actually made me really ill. And I was very fortunate, because my awareness was strong enough to be able to question things, and to be able to think, okay, is this real? Am I making it up? Could I look at it in a different way? So in that sense, I recognize I was quite fortunate, but nevertheless, it took me decades to really think, okay, perhaps there's nothing else for me to do but coming back into the body. And I felt so much resistance. A very silly example. My husband, was completely different than me, loves yoga nidra. For those who don't know, yoga nidra is a practice that allows you to deeply rest, go into yourself, really, really feel your body, and it's beautiful. And he really switches on. He goes, wow. I swear, when we first started, but even now, there'll be moments when I really felt like crawling up the walls. I didn't want to be there. For me, the idea of, moving my attention from my mind and whatever my mind was saying to anywhere else, whether it was my body or this woman's voice, because we listen to someone, it's an app they use. I just couldn't. I couldn't. And you're talking to me. I've been doing this forever. I know all my beautiful things, But that, it was so painful. I was like, I just need to run away. I said, it's incredible because no matter what you do, at some point you're going to have to acknowledge the resistance. And the mind is so powerful, so deceiving. And so what I've learned, especially then after COVID, when everything for me came up, despite being very grounded, luckily, despite everything I had done up to that point, all those wounds came up. And those are not wounds that you're going to be like, well, I'm going to go through them in just one go, and I'm going to heal them all, and I'm going to be perfect. No, it takes time, because that pain is real. The pain really does not want to let you go. It's there in your body. That's his house. It's not going to go. Sorry, you missed your balls. You lost your place. You're gone. So the pain is there. And so during COVID, there were times when mind felt so overwhelming. And one thing I learned was to questioning. Is this real? Is this I would really almost like talk to it. And then I would find that most of the time I'd be like, no, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to do what I want anyway. But if you tell people that it's that simple, quite often they don't believe you. If you explain to them, look, your mind is his own entity. If you ask it, is this real? Did you really mean what you're saying? You create that space that allows you to almost sense the answer, which 99% of the time it's not real. And so you make it really simple. You go and do the washing up, or you go and sit down somewhere quiet, but you create that space. But people are always sense that people want the magical stuff, and I can also understand that, because most of the time they'll be spending so much money on the path. They'll be giving their money for a new course or a new program and this and that, and books. And I don't know about you, but I've read 300 million books, which I've given away anyway in the end. And then ultimately, like little normal things like tending to your plants, or just having a quiet moment. I lay down now on the floor whenever I feel a bit like getting up in my head. One thing I love doing is to just lay down on the floor, but not thinking, okay, I'm going to be breathing this way and I'm going to be doing this. No, I'm just laying down there in life. And that really allows me to move in whatever discomfort I'm feeling, I'm experiencing. And that's when then answers start to arise, Then I start to get these insights, which really feel real. I know that it's not my mind talking.
And then that's actually what really feels magical. Then you realize what magic really is, and that magic really does exist. It is just very, very different to what you thought before, and is this kind of coming back to self, that it is actually the whole journey. The whole journey is all about coming back to self, and it is the biggest journey of any lifetime, and like you said, the hardest, because like for me, the experience of coming back was, awakening. And like you mentioned that I can relate to that. Like when you really decide again, even though decades or lifetime of reading, exploring, and probably all of that is part of the journey, because you have to know so many things in many ways. And then when you come to really then do it, you think, oh, it's so simple, but it's only simple because you've gathered all that knowledge and wisdom, and then it's simple. It's like playing an instrument, like you look at some grandmaster and it looks so simple, but it's not because playing that tune is simple, but it's just because they've practiced lots, I think that's kind of how I look at. So for me, I don't look at all those books and things I did as wasted, not at all, because it is that practicing, and then now I can find, like you, all of these simple things and tricks that work for me. And they are very simple, but it's only because I've practiced forever. So people what was I going to say? Sometimes it is when your mind just goes blank. But yeah, this coming back to self, it is the biggest step, stepping out of the mind, and like you said, becoming aware that mind and you are actually two different things. And it's one of those hugest realizations, and you can see it now. I can listen to someone and I can feel them just moving around in their mind. And even if they are wondering what life is all about, why are we here, all of that, but they're moving and finding kind of answers in this small limited place, because you can feel and see that they haven't actually stepped out and realize who they really are. So once you are in this space, you can really see others in a completely different way. And like you said, by this time when you can actually see others, we've kind of grown in wisdom and compassion, so that it's very, very different than, let's say, how you have those sci-fi movies when people can read other people's mind, and there's no, and then all of these weird things happen. But by the time you actually can do it, unless, let's say, some people do have imbalances and they are mentally ill, and they do experiences these states, and that's what makes them mad or crazy, it's because they haven't built this wisdom and compassion and self-love. And that is why I find that also it takes such a long time, because you do have to build and harvest all of these things, because the next step and then the next step, because otherwise, people really, that's the difference between like a mystic or someone who's mentally imbalanced. It's just that incredible wisdom and compassion, I find. But because these states of being can be quite dangerous if you're not already. And I think that's why all of those courses and books is preparing us. We've prepared ourselves for this, so it's been a slow journey, but now we're ready to deal with this, because being this aware of your body, of other people, of yourself, firstly, it takes responsibility. You have to be responsible with this, but also, like you said, it's more and more intense. It never gets any less intense. And we have this raw intensity. I kind of feel it often as a volcano. And you have to be able to live with this intensity, because life is intense, suffering is intense that you see in others. Even love is intense as hell,
It is because
and,
then, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you go.
No, you go. Carry on. I'm
Yeah.
I'm loving what you're saying. Sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah, that all of these things are intense, and they get intenser. You just get better. You just become able to handle it. And so in this way, it never really gets easy. I often sort of say, in these more spiritual terms, is like the more soul you allow yourself to perceive, meaning that the more self you allow, the more conscious you become of the bigger self, or the eternal state of yourself, the more intense it is. And you have to then be able to live with that intensity. It's not because it's easier. It's like a musician, you practice and you become better at it, and you become faster at it. It's not that you then go back and be a first grader. You're just then a master musician, and you can deal with the speed, with all of these things that you couldn't before. But it doesn't, and it seems simple, but it's simple because during the day there's so much wisdom, and the way you do things, it's with so much wisdom and grace and ease. There really is for me, I find there are grace, there are ease, but it's only because I've let go of all those crappy things that were bullshit, that were not important, that so that's why things are easy. Not because for someone looking at my life, perhaps they would think it's not for them. It may not be easy. Like, for someone trying to learn a piano, just learning, it's not easy for them. But for someone who's practiced for a long time, it looks easy, but it's not easy. So do you find you can relate in that way?
Yeah, definitely. Because I just think, whatever you do on your path, as you say, it just paves path. It's never wasted. It's never, you know, it's necessary almost, but it also means that at some point you're gonna have to be able to let it go. And if it means also moving away from, you know, people you met, doctrines you almost made your own, or, you know, teachings or whatever, but it comes a point when things can no longer be conceptual. You have to bring them into everyday life, going back to paying the bills, or having a crappy day, which is not going to change. And, you know, for instance, I live right in the heart of London. I live on the main road. There's loads of kids in my building. There are days when it's not going to be quiet. You know, no matter what I do, I can't go to people and say, well, then be quiet, because I can't experience, you know, the divine. I can't, you know, people are going to be people. So what do you do? Like, and I think everything you learn along the way helps you to deal with situations as they arise, but also understanding that ultimately, as I just said, people are people, and they all have their own way to go through life. And I think one thing that's become very clear to me is that no matter what you learn, other people are able to learn the same, and maybe not, but they're still gonna have their own, they deserve to have their own way to experience life. And so one thing I recently had to truly own is that it's the way I offer my truth, my opinion. But it took me a long time. And I sensed that during COVID, because during COVID, I made certain decisions, which I stand by. Fine. But as I dealt with other people around who made a different choice, I sensed quite strongly, you know, my own wound. And it's not something you're going to go and tell people, you know, you're going to keep it to yourself. You're going to think, okay, what's going on here? And I know every single time I opened my mouth that there wasn't me saying, you know, I just chose to do this. Fine. And the conversation, there was so much narrative attached to whatever I was not even imposing to others, because my intention wasn't to impose my choice onto others. But it was almost like it became very personal. It almost became a personal quest. And I saw that the way I was putting myself out there really came from whatever I experienced as a child. So the world became my family. And that's very dangerous, because you think you want to help others, you want to open their eyes. But what you're doing is you're reliving your own wound over and over again. And it was only recently talking to a very good friend of mine who's not interested in spiritual things. The most spiritual thing she's done recently was to go and see a therapist. She's very excited about that, but ends there. She has her own authority, her own wisdom. And we were talking about something quite dear to, quite close to her heart, and something went lost in translation. There was a bit of a friction there. And it was a very like quick exchange when I suddenly realized that I couldn't anymore offer my opinion in a way that then I've got that wound attached to it. It just doesn't, it can no longer happen, because it just takes so much energy away from me. You know, I'd rather be quiet than try and talk, but it's my wound talking. And I really had to sit down and admit, yes, this is what's been happening. I've done it for quite a while. That's why it's quite dangerous, especially in our field, when people suddenly want to be activists. They go out there and, oh, I want to change the world. I want to open people's eyes, you know, whatever is happening. And because I've been there myself, I recognize the damage, you know. I spot it miles away. I'm like, no, it's not you, it's not your heart talking. It's your wound. Because when the heart talks, the conversation goes very differently, very, very differently. And so for me, one thing I've learned so far, that all these books I've learned, all these programs I've joined, and these people have followed, ultimately, yes, they helped me to come this far, but at some point, that learning had to come into every conversation I had, every choice I make, because then otherwise it's just beautiful words, really, which quite often a bit expensive. So, you know, you could just save yourself lots of money, but you can. I found at times you have, you know, you have to invest in yourself. I believe that. But you also have to be able to walk away and become your own authority. For me, that's important. That's what ultimately is the message from my book. Because none of the people I write about in my book were dubious of themselves, their own life, their own choices. You know, in one of the chapters, I talk about this very good friend of mine. And she still lives in south of Italy. She never went to school. And to this day, she is one of the wisest people I ever met in my entire life. And the way she offers her presence has no narrative. She's not interested in, you know, trying to change your experience, or she just offers herself, but in such a beautiful way. That for me, that's a master. That is a master. And I have to say, especially recently, especially after COVID, some of the people I met along the way, geez, you can feel the intensity, as you said. You know, you just think, you know, just come down a little bit, almost, because whatever you're trying to say, there's so much intensity you're carrying that ultimately you're not helping anyone. And I can still sense that in small circles, whenever there's an online exchange, and things can get quite, you know, quite unhelpful at times, because obviously people want to come together when they want to exchange their experiences, but there is so much wound still attached. So yeah, that's what I'm finding right now. And I don't know whether, again, going back to what I said before, is because I'm writing this new book, and life is like, okay, let's see what you're doing with your wound. I don't know whether I can add something else to this, or you would like to. Are you okay with me talking still?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about your
like
guest. No. You just keep going, because we're here. We're celebrating your life and celebrating your wisdom. So keep going.
Thank you so much. One thing I actually noticed lately is oh God, I lost the thread. I forgot what I was going to say. Yes, one thing that actually came up for me very vividly recently is that, going back to what you were saying, that you have to go through layers and layers of pain, you know, and quite often it's a lifetime work, and people can't appreciate that enough. You know, they think, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to be feeling better. No, very often you feel much worse. you really feel so bad that you just think, what's wrong with me? And it takes a lot of compassion and kindness and sense of humor, like, you know, fun, about keeping it light is so important, because again, then you get trapped in the mind, and the mind is so deceiving, and
so serious. It is so
serious. Like, hey, how dare you? You know, it's almost, I can picture my mind going around to all the people I meet along the way. How dare you be like this? It's actually quite weird at times. I'm like, okay, yeah, chill. I've learned to make fun of myself, because you know, people don't like sharing these things, I find. There were hard moments, especially growing up, when my mind really took over, and it did help that those around me growing up would dismiss me, and it was their way to help me, of course, will dismiss me, say, oh, you know, you should stop thinking. I told you that you think too much, or you think so much. And that obviously added to it. You know, there was no escape from myself. What they couldn't understand, it was like, there was no way for me to escape from myself. And when I talk in my book about the fact that at some point, just after COVID, I just really didn't want to be here anymore. And what I found with people, that quite often they think, well, I just want to kill myself. But it was, I generally think when you decided that your time is over, that you can no longer be here, you will find your way, and you won't even talk about it. You go. You know, it happens so quickly at times. There's no, you know, it almost becomes so still, and you just go. But in my case, it was more like, it just was really hard to accept the fact that I couldn't escape from myself. That wherever I went, there was myself. And life had become so unbearable because I just thought, whatever I'm doing, I still stand for myself. And that's when you just think, I can't be here anymore. I feel really, life becomes small. You know, you can't move. Because again, you're not in your body, because coming back to your body is so painful and unbearable at times. So I really felt like a gypsy, really, like a nomad. I was roaming around, unable to really come back. And what came to me recently, talking to a friend of mine, it was sharing with me how he feels about life. And in that moment, it was very clear to me that it wasn't him talking, it was his own word. But that word is actually that word we all tune in. And it's the feminine energy that is being wounded in a way that she is so weary and angry and unwilling to come halfway with the masculine energy. I'm finding more and more gentle and able to say, I suffer and your words hurt me. And so when you're not careful, you tune into that, and then so you have your own pain, and then you tune into this, and life can become really messy. But it came to me in such a way, and I'm so grateful for that, because I was like, this is what's been happening. No matter what I do, I'm still tuning into that wound that is very much on my family. And then suddenly it came to me that all the females, all the women in my family had the tendency to relate to the men around them in such a not derogatory way, but there wasn't any recognition of these men. They were very, and you probably experienced the same, because we grew up in countries that were quite close.
Very and such derogatory. It still shocks me how even the jokes are so derogatory on both for the male and for the women, and it shocks me now to see that, because I don't in my world, not because it's not around me, but I just don't. I'm not there anymore, but it shocks me. Anyway, you go.
And I am shocked, because I can have still in the wound, and it comes up, for instance, with my own husband, but also the way I relate to the world. I feel like, you know, what we grew up with in terms of masculine energy, we just had these men who were very strong or whatever. But truth is, remembering now my grandparents, my dad, and also my dad's friends, there was a pain waiting to be acknowledged, but almost couldn't be spoken of, because, you know, culture.
There were no words. There were no words, and nobody actually was turned inward. So there
No.
were no words. I found in my journey, and this is why I found books, for example, let's say astrology and numerology, so helpful, because all of a sudden I had words that explained what was happening on the inside. But now it's all everywhere, psychological words and terms and videos and everything. But only 20, 30 years ago, and especially in different cultures, there were no words for what's going on inside. You couldn't explain. No one would even ask you. No one asked you, oh, how are you really? No one cared.
Just had to get on
You
with it.
know?
And that's why people like you and I, we well looked like, you know, what's wrong with you? Weird. Because, you know, we sensed that there was so much more. And so it was interesting to realize that all the women I grew up with, very strong, very resilient. But ultimately, and they all somehow, you may believe it, that they all were victims. All these men were, truth is, they were perpetrators at the same time, because I don't remember ever my father's pain being acknowledged.
No,
So,
absolutely.
you know, there was you know, this dramatic attempt from my mother's side to understand my dad, but understand him through her own wound. And that wound keeps you prisoner. He feeds from you, and he shows up in life as you're dealing with the world, with your loved ones. And that's why sometimes people within the same family need to go separate ways, because they have too much shared history that one they cannot heal together. You have to
and also like, do you find that you have to really let go of the big taboo, which is culture, you know, like culture in so many places, not just places, but even like in the modern world, or culture is important and we can't put culture down. But when you're doing this, I found I had to actually let go of my culture, because if I followed my culture, I would not be able to uncover these wounds, because so many things are a taboo to even think about. So many things are taboo inside to feel about, even if you don't. Like, I remember when I first really started exploring this early 20s, like I would have been maybe 21 and stuff, when I really started even just reading Buddhist books, you know, like I was in Sydney, and I really felt, even though I wasn't Catholic or anything, I wasn't religious, but I felt, shit, is God gonna strike me down because I'm, you know, there was this kind of not inbred, but thoughts from such a young age, or culturally, that you don't even have to be taught, you feel it, you breathe it as you grow, that yeah, you're gonna be damned, or you're gonna die, or you're a witch or whatever, if you even feel, and not even write it down, not even tell anyone, just feeling inside. So allowing this, it took incredible amount of courage, and then to actually keep exploring and going. Is that something that you can relate?
Definitely, because it becomes so painful. It becomes extremely painful. You know, recently, it's been a couple of years, I took the decision to walk away from my family. And again, people want the drama, people want the bad and the good. Life is not like that. I sensed a pain that it was so deep and so ancient. There was nothing I personally could do, despite everything I've done. You know, despite all my beautiful words. And also there was the need on my part to just go and for a moment breathe, like just come away from all the intensity. I couldn't do it there. But you're not supposed to do that, because in my culture, you were born together, you stick together, and it could be a nightmare, and it was, but you're going to be together because like that, you're tough. If you stick together, you are very tough, you're strong. But if you walk, you're weak. Or if you don't have kids, you're selfish. Or, you know, lots of different things. But what has this allowed me to feel is deep compassion. And I mean this, deep compassion for the people I grew up with, because Their wound is my wound.
Absolutely.
I gave myself the opportunity, the space. I wouldn't call it courage. For me, it was a matter of staying alive. I wanted to live, and I was dying there. But
I felt too like that. I
yeah,
would have been dead in the early 20s if I didn't leave, because I just couldn't tolerate. I didn't have words for it, but like you, I had to leave. Yeah.
When I was 18, it was very clear. I had this sense of my soul dying, which obviously is not the case. It can never happen. But I was like, if I stay here, I'll die. And I moved to London because that, you know, I felt it very, very strong in my heart. That was the place for me to be. I love the culture and I love the history. Then you take that wound with you. Yourself is coming with you. That pain body is coming with you. And so no matter where you go, that wound still sucks you in. So you keep in touch with those people whom you love dearly. It doesn't mean that they should be in your life still. But I kept in touch 40, well, I've been here 30 years. So it was as if they were living on my same floor. I kid you not. It was the same dynamics I left 30 years ago, they came with me. And at some point, it became so unbearable because ultimately, I feel that anyone wants to be healed, really. There's always the need to go back to balance and acceptance and love. I truly believe this. And I had to become so unbearable that I had to walk away. And it's only recently that I've seen how deep, how far this wound goes. And I remember the men I grew up with, and how often women will accuse them to not to be reliable or not to be able to speak out their own pain. They weren't allowed. It's not true. They weren't allowed. You know, I remember very vividly one day my own dad trying to open up, of course, in his own way, you know. No, because the idea we have of the masculine energy is the prince on the horse, the shining armor, and we want them strong. And the moment they try and open up, and then suddenly it was very clear to me that this feminine energy was so wounded in my family. It's so deceitful. Like she wouldn't let you go. She didn't want you to be any different. And in fact, I have to say, women in my own family tend to be extremely competitive, blaming one another, not being able to let go. And for me, that is the feminine energy that's been so deeply wounded. You know, that wound wants to be recognized. So it's been really interesting on my end to experience this in between books. I'm like, oh my God, it's only been intense. So going back to what you were saying about intensity, no matter what you learn, there are days when you feel it on yourself.
And there are so many things that, you know, you said that we could unpack, like there's just so much in it. So we can't go everywhere. But one of the things that for me was also huge, well, it was the turning point, was this realization that, you know, like when I was in a mind, I was always feeling, wow, I want to be someone else. You know, like I watch the movies, I read books, and it's like, and I looked up at famous people and the act, you know, this is kind of like, okay, someone, I want to be like that. I want my life to be like that. The only person I don't want to be is me. Yeah, and that's because there is so much pain in that. And when I realized, wow, I will for eternity, you know, when I realized, wow, I'm eternal, and I will for eternity be me. And then from then on, when it was much easier, not in a sense that it wasn't painful or that the broken heart didn't come up and it was so extremely painful and all of these things. But whenever this thing came for an integration, I realized, well, because I am me only forever, I have to make my life be more less wound or how whatever, you know, healed, not joyful, or and so that's what actually then started me on a real, and that was like maybe 15 years ago or something, when it started to make me on that real journey to bring all of that knowledge and make it real in my life, because I realized, wow, you know what, it doesn't matter. None of these things matter. Do I get reincarnated? Do I have one life only? Whatever. Those kind of things are interesting to think about. But when it comes down to, regardless, even if I did just cease to exist in 20, 30 years, whatever, I have to learn to live with myself, and to learn to live with myself, not just to learn, but I have to then let go and heal and learn how do I heal these incredibly wounded parts that don't allow me to love, to feel joy, to feel beauty. And that's when every time something painful came for integration, I realized, well, it's got to be done. Let's just get on with it, because I realized that I can't escape. Like you, I went to another side of the world. Like you, I realized, yep, I can't escape myself. Everything I carried, and I just want to be joyful. I want to feel joy regardless of what things happen in the world or in my day, like the everyday things, but I still, underneath that, I want to be joyful. And there was this huge family pain, and now I've also had all these realizations about the feminine side within my family, and also the need to be on my own, simply because you have to sort out all of these things, and you need time to heal, and you need space to heal, and all of that. But it's certainly not, it's the most gritty, the most real, the most full-on journey to actually come to yourself. And that is why so many people are running. They would destroy themselves through drugs, through alcohol, through all these things, because it is the hardest thing to face yourself. And then, of course, comes the next level question, which is like, so why is life like this? Why does soul want to experience this? Because you have to come to terms that, okay, so especially if I had difficult experiences, painful, why is that so? But then I realize now that being a consciousness before even the physical world is like that. When you stop and feel, it is incredibly intense. It is incredibly hard this is the nature of consciousness itself, so whatever plays in our life is the reflection of consciousness, of being, of that, I am that I am in life. And also then what you were saying about men, I think now that women were kind of first in exploring, and now really is this time where we see so many men blossoming and opening up and unpacking their feelings, from like just one word. All of a sudden you can see them, and it's so beautiful and touching and gorgeous. And many of us now that have done, many women that have done this work, are now safe harbor for men to unpack their feelings and what they feel and their emotions, and like to discover who they are and express what they feel and be gentle. But it does take a discernment, because majority of people out there are still very wounded. So they really, we do create this space for men where they can feel and just open up, but that is not only as partners and husbands and whatever, but as friends, as let's say co-creators. Maybe you do a project together, maybe you do a song together, but it's just such a different kind of experience and feeling, with that. And I'm just like incredibly I don't know, in awe of this process, because from where I started, which is that battle to death between genders, male and female, which actually brought my immediate family was self-destroyed from the inside because of these, my parents, to actually now being able to witness not only myself like healing this wound and not projecting it on another, but to witness that men, it's just so beautiful when they're gentle, and and can express. They're not the same. We're not the same. We're not supposed to, men a certain way and women a certain way, but uniquely we can express how we look at the world, and we can cherish and give space and acknowledge how men tend to look at things a bit differently, and not to try to change them, but just hold that space where they actually feel safe to express and interact. And what I find amazing is just how beautiful that feels to me, how I love to witness, to experience, and I'm just looking forward even to more and more of this.
Yeah, same here. Actually, I've been quite lucky because, obviously I'm very close to my husband. It's just the two of us, that we've got a little dog. But the way he shares things, or he he will ask me to do things. At first, I felt very much resistant, because I was like, it was a gentleness and a firmness in asking what he wanted. I wasn't used to, and then I realized that actually that's the new man. Without going to the extreme, you don't have to be. You can still be very masculine and be extremely gentle. Is extremely, gracious in how you express yourself. But I remember in the beginning, and even quite recently, it brought up a lot of stuff in me. I wasn't comfortable with that, because I come from something completely different, where men were not really demand, but like you wouldn't ask, like my husband is capable of, to perhaps do things in a different way. I grew up with people demanding, because they probably felt so out of their depth, that way to be so forceful is the only thing they know how to be. So yeah, it's very interesting times when I feel like I think we're all coming to our own sovereignty, and we're all finding our way, but also we're all healing this deep wounding that we all carry. And so it can be quite messy. And I think it's for people who are a little bit more settled in their own, perhaps have come up, a little bit further down the way, to actually that don't, like, not feeding the gains, the friction that often we feel, even there's so much talking about different things nowadays, and I often sense that by interfering in that, by talking about, by taking a stand, we actually then feed that wound. That ultimately, through so much talking and so much, that wound doesn't want to die. Hence, people are still arguing. People are, trying to just be, even the activists going out there and making so much noise about it. Ultimately, for me, that is still the wound not wanting to heal, not being ready quite yet to be healed. And so you got to be very careful. But it's the same as recently has come to my attention that in quite a few different circles, so there's this talking about, I moved on from being spiritual, I don't want to be called spiritual, and what's wrong with the spiritual people. But you're still feeling a wound, you're still creating a friction. Ultimately, people are where they're at, and if in this moment for them the spirituality, however they want to call it, is important, then so be it. And people ask me why I chose the title. It's a bit of a strange title for a book, it could have been a bit like misleading. But I grew up in a country where people will go to church, not because they actually believe that there really is a God up there with a little beard and whatever. No, it was a way for them to belong to something. And I obviously never kind of like sensed that. I looked at life in my own way, even as a child. I was aware of other things. But I always felt it would have been really cool to go to any of those people, like my grandparents, and just rub in their face that there is no God up there in the sky. And so I feel like that's happening right now as we speak, even in spiritual circles, just because people have moved on, or they've found, they've gone ahead, then suddenly they look at people behind them like, oh, you shouldn't be doing, you're wasting your time, you shouldn't be reading those books, or, it's cool, I find, because people ultimately, they can just walk at their own speed. That's the only thing they can do. And it's for us to remind one another, but very gently, rather than talking through our wound. And that's when it becomes really dangerous, whether you're an activist, you're an author, whether you're a teacher. For me, right now, each one of us has the responsibility to really create enough space where we can really sense when our wound is stopping. And then we stop. Whether we are in a prominent position, we're a teacher or wherever, we stop and we're like, okay, it's my wound talking now. What do I do? Because otherwise you keep on feeding this. And that's why the world is a little bit chaotic right now, because everybody's, you look at these people, they really are stuck in the pain. I remember talking to this guy the other day, again, going back to him tuning into the feminine energy, being so women. So I said to him, okay, I hear you. So how long are we still going to talk about the story? And he said, oh, it's still early, another maybe 200 years. And that sounded so absurd to me, so insane. Because it's like, people don't want to let go of the story. That's the problem. They can't. Because they get so stuck in this. The man is completely taken over, and they really believe the story. But if they stopped for a moment, they will really see that their story is my story, is your story. And then it cannot be that I'm talking because my story is bigger than yours. It cannot be. That ends the right way. You almost take a step back and you want to hear other people. And it humbles you so much. And that's why I decided to write about those people. I didn't want a book about God. I don't, it's not my field. I don't believe in religion or whatever. But in each one of those people, I really sensed the divine. Because they weren't imposing their story on me. They were putting out there. They were their story, but from behind. It was fascinating to watch.
Yeah, because I find that, there's again that not opposition, but the both are true. There is this incredible simplicity that came to me, and also then there is also incredible complexity, like what listening to you, I sort of have these visions and images of the complexity of everything and how everything is multi-layered. I've got this just recently I've been sort of pondering on this, how everything is so multi-layered and complex that, it depends on what you focus on. And so important when when I relate to a person is to first work out where they are in that layer, in those layers, because like when you talked about, a person, when they are in that duality where they identify with a certain wound, and then they project the other wound onto, the other thing onto to the next. And it's just, again, that coin, duality is all about coins, and coins have two sides, and one side is this, and then on the other side is that. And until we actually then own both sides, until I own both sides, I project on the one that I don't like. And the one that I don't like, that I don't sort of identify consciously with, sometimes that one is positive. If I always think, oh, I'm a loser, then I project the other side of the coin, which is the winner or whatever, to other people. And sometimes it's a negative, meaning that I see myself as good and everyone else is bad, but it's all the same coin. Again, it's the same energy, just different side of the coin. And that's the nature of duality. And all of these things, like you were explaining about the wounds, when we project that onto the other, or I'm a female, so males are bad, or whatever, I'm a male, so females are bad, kind of thing. Again, is that duality. And people talk like when they go and are activists, and it is because they don't realize that the other side is within them. Like, for example, let's say masculine or feminine, good or bad, light and dark. When they sort of just identify with light, then they project the dark on the outside. Then they say, well, I can only be happy if all of those people that carry the darkness change. And so I become an activist. And that's when they're still playing that duality, and then because they think that if they change everyone, if only everyone in the world would change, then I could be happy. And then this journey, coming back to self, is realizing actually all of the coins are within me. So all the good and the bad are within me. So the part that triggers me, that I think it's on the outside, is actually on the inside. And like, for example, let's say coming from certain cultures, and all of the cultures, there's just these how can I say, almost like I thought was an inner Nazi, this horrible part that was so oppressive to me, so oppressive, that oppressive part, so that incredibly critical part, the incredibly harsh part, like when I used to project it out in the world, and then I realized, far out, this part is within me. And so that's that journey back to self, when you realize, wow, if I am to feel joy, if I am to feel love, and if I realize that I will live with myself wherever I go in the world and forever, then I need to own this part, and I need to integrate and either not listen to its harsh words that are on the inside of me, or it will transform or transmute and go into neutral. So this has been a huge part of that journey, and that's why it takes such a long time, because I had to relearn how to be on the inside, which parts to listen, which parts to dissolve, which parts to imbue with love. Basically, all of them had to be imbued with love, because I pretty much at one stage, I remember at first when I really awakened, I realized, wow, there is not even one part that I have that is loving of self. There was not one part that loved me. It was self-loathing, it was self-criticism. And this was very much on my mother's side. And it's not because she passed it on to me, but it was passed on to her. So it's not like about blaming, but it's about recognizing, okay, so this voice that she used to be, I actually now carry on the inside. And that's that huge, incredible awakening, and that's why, again, coming back to those layers, like you said, okay, yeah, that's how I see it now, that all of those books brought me to here. And yes, when people are still doing that spiritual journey, that's why, it's right for them until they change. They say, okay, now I'm at a different place. But also, it is about learning just how to love self, how to accept, how to let go of the guilt and shame, and how to look at those things and hear them, what they're saying. And then once all of that happens, then the outside world doesn't trigger anymore. Of course, years and years after, because it's such a long process. And then I really come to then a place when, wow, actually, but I'm not triggered anymore. I don't feel to be an activist because out of my wound, but I can see that some things are actually better and feel good and feel joyful. I enjoy when it's clean air. I enjoy when, all of these kind of things. I enjoy when people are treated fairly. So now I can perhaps be an activist again, but in a very, very different way, so that I'm not controlled by my wound, I'm not controlled by them, I'm not triggered, but simply because, it is lovely when it's all clean, when there's fresh air. It is lovely when I go out to the shop and I don't see any police beating up people, and so there definitely are things. So that's what I mean about layers, that I can't just, now I realize that I can't just straight away say, okay, that person, just because they are perhaps protesting on the street, are from the wound. It doesn't mean that at all. Because all of it, and that's that incredible, everything is simplicity, but everything is incredibly complex, because I find that all of the issues and all of the things are like this, and this is why that clarity and discernment are so important, because I need to be able to not just when I see other people doing, but for me, like you said, I need to be able to see, am I from the wound, or am I from clarity, or because I can be doing absolutely the same thing, like that Zen saying, what do you do before enlightenment? I chop wood. What do you do after enlightenment? I chop wood. Because life pretty much looks the same. You still have to get up, you have to cook, you have to clean, you have to, all of these things, you have to go shopping, or maybe you have someone made to do it, whatever. But life is still the same, but it's just the quality, and with the less and less wounds that you have, or the less and less that you listen to that critical voice, and that all of a sudden you realize, wow, actually, I'm doing so many things out of self-love and self-respect, and I don't anymore put myself down, and I don't, because it's then you realize, wow, actually, I can live with myself forever, but it is that radical acceptance, because I have to accept myself wherever I am, however I look, whatever gender that I am, whatever color I am, whatever nationality I am, and whatever age I am. I have to accept all of those things radically. And then within that, deal with everything that comes, like, let's say, like we talked the other day about the menopause, and, there again, layers I found for me is there's one layer that I have to feel bad when it comes, and it's like, no, I'm not, because I'm in a different place. But was it easy? Not always at all, but I found ways to deal with it in a different way. And so for everything that I face, but every other human being faces, I can now face it with much more peaceful demeanor, with joy, and always knowing that even if the day for me can be shit or whatever, because we live in the world we live in, but at the same time, I know that this too will pass, and I will again come back to that wonderful, incredible, sensual, feel good, and that is such a huge difference, and that is such an incredible quality that now when I look at, like all of the monies that I spent for spiritual journey and whatever, that some of the teachings that help me and people that have inspired me along the way, it's actually priceless. Like, when I look at, you have all these Lamborghinis and whatever for $250,000 or whatever, but like, if I look at some of the things that people have given me along the way, I would pay for 1 hour to be with them, if, now $250,000, and I wouldn't think it's too much, because it's these kind of things that are the real gold, that are the real diamonds, that have been enabled me to be loving to myself, so that I can live with myself, for eternity, anywhere in the world that I am, and regardless of what other people are doing. And it's not about being selfish or whatever, but it's just out of compassion that, yes, I'm here, I can perhaps assist you, but I can't do it for you. So it's just this huge change of so many things, and that's what is just makes this journey so incredible, such an incredible adventure.
It is. I just think it's not a journey to be rushed, but just really to be, because when you allow yourself to just really turn the narrative off, then you can really be present. You understand that ultimately, it doesn't matter about reincarnation, coming another life, whatever, past lives. It's this moment that we have. And, you're able to show up in such a different way, that actually, no matter what's happening, and you're going to get bad days, you're going to get bad things. You're going to get people dying and, maybe an illness, but it's really different. It's, and it's just, I love when you say, ultimately, it's you all the way through. And for me, that's a game changer, because you got to really give to yourself that. I don't know even if to call it self-love or but like just that compassion, that kindness, and because I feel like that quite often we are so cruel towards ourselves, and it's a shame, because then we really do not enjoy what we have. We're so focused, fixated almost onto the destination, that we really miss out the incredible richness that I'm sure all of us have at any moment. People on this call, I'm sure that the very fact that they would be on this call means that they're well enough to know that life can be experienced in a different way. And I think that's really important. That's when you understand the value of stories. To me, stories are who we are, and we offer them, we feel them, and then we let them go so they can come back bigger. We can write them in a bigger way. I feel like ultimately what we want in this life is to create more space so we can grow bigger. We can remember all that we are, but we need that space. And ultimately, we decided how to do that. Whether you want to go and lay down on the floor for 5 minutes, when you want to go and walk in the woods, anything that allows you to really be in this moment. And yeah, so I think there is a need right now to find our own way, really like find our own unique way to turn that narrative down a little bit. I think that's where we're heading towards, that becoming sovereign in a very human life, in this very human moment. And then everything becomes an incredible adventure. So, yeah.
Because there's such huge, changes happening for us now, like when I say us, I mean humanity. With AI and all of these kind of things that are happening in the world, like so turbulent for humanity, isn't it? So it kind of feels like we're like these beacons, but our way is not is a natural way, but it's not the easiest of ways, and it's not very attractive to people, because for people, attractive will be, okay, what if I put some implants? And again, it's not bad to have implants. Like, let's say if you can't walk and the implant helps you to walk, there's nothing wrong with that, but implants, when they think, okay, so I'm going to go into some other reality and escape this pain and escape the presence of self, there will be more and more venues.
There's a fine line where I think we've been asked over and over again to really own ourselves, and that becomes important, because if you come to me and say that this technology can, for instance, write a poster for me, I like to think that I've got enough in me to come up with a good post on my own. However, perhaps there are days when my mind, when I feel a little bit tired, and perhaps that technology may give me an idea I then will go and expand on. I think there is a fun. I think as long as we keep this in a way that it serves us, that we understand our role in it, that we don't make it bigger than us, or we don't make it like an escape from what human life is, then it's incredible. Yeah, why not? Amazing. But the moment it becomes an escape, the moment it is meant to give us something that ultimately is not part of this life, then yeah, I feel like we're walking. It's a very fine edge, and again, more than ever now, it really is imperative to have that breathing moment, the breathing, territory around us. It almost has to become so vast that we can just really sense ourselves, because otherwise we do things reacting or escaping from, and that's when things may go wrong, may go a bit ugly, maybe. But yeah, I think there's a lot of talking about this right now, but yeah. And again, I feel like we're missing the big point, is that we are God. We are. No one is superior. As long as we remember that, but really understand that, then everything helps us. Everything is here for our own good. Why not? Bring it on. It's fine.
It is, because I think a lot of people, because when they're caught in the mind only, when they haven't had that experience, that they are much more than mind, that mind is just a tool, for their greater self, and when they haven't been out of that perception. But I'm surprised, like, how many people actually do meditate, even like for 2 hours a day, and like scientists and stuff, for example. But there are still such huge parts of human endeavor where, let's say, even just saying the word spirituality and all of that is still such a taboo, because it was put down so much, like it's into the bag of, oh, these magical tricks is just tricks. And if for people that are in the mind, there is nothing outside, they don't have any sense of that there is, and it's very scary. And that's why a lot of the people keep running, that busyness and the busyness of life, and it just keeps being more and more busy, because it's not like how I remember a few decades ago when it was like, oh, all of these technology and the goods are going to save us time, but they're only saving time so you can work more and be busy more. All these
if technology can help you create a little bit more, just more fluidity, more, I can allow your life to flow a little bit, then so be it, fine. But you to be able to do that, you have to come away from the mind. I feel like it's the same for whoever calls themselves spiritual. Yeah, I can meditate for 2 hours, and then suddenly you're back in the mind, because I just think your life becomes your meditation, and then you don't sit anywhere for 2 hours, because you are in a meditative state your entire day. And I think I can understand why people may feel a bit put off about the whole spirituality thing, because if you think that, you get these people who sit there forever and meditating, and suddenly they are with other people, they're interacting with their families, with their loved ones, friends, colleagues, and they are just no different than anyone else. So they experience the same pain, the same anger, the same issues. So how is your meditation serving you? And so things quite often are found in the spiritual world remain very conceptual, they are of the mind. Ultimately, I remember you saying once during one of your live calls that even making tomato sauce was like an orgasm, because you are so present that tomato sauce, it just comes into you. It's so amazing. And I remember that day I thought, okay, this is where I couldn't relate to what you were saying. And then a couple of months down the line, I remember really smelling that tomato sauce I was making. And it was the most incredible thing. And that is how you present, how you meditate. Ultimately, meditation helps you to to come back here in the now. And so you making tomato sauce is a meditation. So I can understand why some people may still feel a bit put off by spirituality, because I think people they got trapped in there, and so they gave this false image. Really, no one's fault. It's okay, but
Yeah. There's just lots of layers to walk through, isn't it? And lots of discernment and a lot of different, oh my gosh, the sometimes I do wonder, like, because you were talking about these razor's edge, like, how did I make it? And like to come back to self, pretty much that's it, like when all of those things really don't mean anything, enlightenment and whatever have you, it's meaningless for me. It's like I've come back to myself. I can live with myself, and I keep exploring. Will things and issues come back? Yeah, I'm very human. I have issues, like, no problem. But but everything that comes to me, I can now deal with, and I don't have to escape. Or even if I escape for a bit, like you said, okay, watch some movie or whatever, it's okay. I know that even that will pass, and after a couple of hours I'll again come back to self. There's no need to run away from hard feelings, from difficult, challenging feelings and emotions. And this is the thing that again, also I had a misconception about, because again, like, meaning, what is it going to be like to be self-loving? Then it's just, oh, you're just going to have these all fluffy, nice thoughts, but it's not true. I have the most feelings that I've ever had, because the more and more I open myself, the more the hues come in. It's kind of like, let's say if I look at my old life, maybe I had 5 colors. Let's say if I look at feelings and emotions, I had 5 colors, but now the palette of colors just keep going into infinity, on all sides. So all the different shades and scents and smells and whatever. But it's on all of it. Like it's also the more challenging, but also the more, because this is the joy of consciousness. I find the awareness to play with this. So if I thought that, when I'm in this state, I will just not feel anything, but it's not true. Actually, I feel even more, because you're like, I'm just like this instrument of my soul, this human facet is like an instrument of soul, that soul touches life and feels and tastes life. And so I have the whole plethora back, because I have that space and safe space and self-love that creates space within me to make choices. Okay, so which feeling am I going to hang out with? Which choices am I going to go with? Because some are definitely much more pleasant to feel than others, but still at the same time, I have to be open. It's kind of like that I open myself inside, and the river of life just keeps getting bigger and bigger. That flow, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and all flows through me. All that happens in the world flows through me. It is just that I don't identify myself with it, and so I don't get stuck in certain issues of sufferings anymore. But it flows through me. I just don't stop it. It's kind of like you have those, let's say if you have a flow and the leaves and debris flows through it, and all of a sudden I said, oh, look at this suffering. People, there's a war and there are people suffering. And I grab that and I stop it, and then all of a sudden I feel all those feelings. But if I just let it flow through me, I notice it, and yes, I have compassion, but I don't have to dive into that experience. And also I find also with pain and suffering, that somehow it's like sacred oil around me, and nothing actually traumatizes me anymore. Even though I have access to all of the feelings, the whole range of whatever, I have no idea what will be in 2 years. I will say, oh my God, 2 years ago, I thought I had a whole range of feelings. What about now? This is kind of what life is like. It's always more new and an expansion, but it kind of like, these things don't traumatize me anymore. And that's probably what that compassion and the self-love, that it's kind of like you said, they're hard to define, and there are no proper words for it, but they're like that ointment that prevents everything from re-wounding. It's not easy to feel, but it doesn't wound. That's how I feel.
Yeah, definitely. Just it's like a little buffer. I find, you know, it
Mm.
helps you to really see how deep you are still in your wound. You know, and we all do that. Well, even when you read things online, then you can sense where, you know, where people are at. I find with online exchanges that quite often you think you're helping someone by leaving a comment to their friend or wherever, but quite often there's a bit of a judgment in it, which is, you know, sad really, because you never know with people. You know, sure, ultimately it'd be amazing if everybody could give themselves that kindness, that compassion, but it's such a long journey. You know, and you have to be at it all the time.
Mm.
It's not, people have this misconception that, and I do that too. There are days, there are moments when I actually find myself waiting for the voice to speak, and I'm like, what am I doing? It's not, you know, I wake up and I'm like, yes, I'm here. Where are you? I'm here. And no, you are your own voice, you know. So yeah, incredible times. I'm fascinated, and to feel life again in a way that no matter what's happening, I just stop and I think, wow, this is incredible. I'm having the shittest day of my life. This is exciting. I'm like, oh my God, what's gonna happen to me? It's incredible. And then I go to bed and I think, oh my God, yes, it really was hard today. And then I wake up and I'm like, yeah, okay. And you're floating, and it's yeah, and then you witness other people's journey, and it becomes so humbling. You see them changing, and you just think, wow. And so even when you're so tempted to give your opinion and to leave a comment or whatever, but then you know that the person has it within themselves to come out of the wound, to yeah, transcend it and to move beyond. And you let them, you need to allow them to do that. So it's definitely a great time to be alive.
And dear Antonia, I just looked at the time. It's actually,
Yes.
we've been talking for 2
Wow.
hours.
I'm sorry, everybody.
No, it's wonderful. It's wonderful because I'm finding that, like me too, like when I listen to some podcasts and stuff, sometimes they go for 3-4 hours. And if it's a good one, you just lose yourself in it because, it's wonderful that the conversation was so interesting. We just completely forgot about time. We forgot about anything. We just
It's been
having
such a
tea and
pleasure.
coffee.
It's been such a, I'm so happy we did this, and it's such an honor because I just really love how real you keep me. And for me, there's no distinction between reality and magic, and it's all one. And it's amazing when you get to a point when you can float like that. Yeah.
And you flow and we can, even though each of us are so, not just you and I, but like you said, each of us are so different. There are so many commonalities, we're unique, but also the experiences that we can relate to, so many experiences, because it's kind of like for me, leaving the matrix, for lack of better words. We use all of these words that we have to use something because there aren't better words. But, for leaving the matrix is kind of like, if someone like says to you, not to you in part, but to anyone, well, okay, let's go and have a shower. It's very similar. And it doesn't matter if that's in a jungle somewhere where you just have a little bucket and whatever, but but it's kind of very similar. So to explain how you go and have a shower, we can explain maybe a little bit, details are a bit different, but we can relate, and this is the same as leaving the matrix. There are certain things you have to do. You have to open the gates, you have to deal with shame, and you have to deal with guilt, you have to deal with wounding, you have to learn how to self-love. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, these things are pretty much very similar. Oh my gosh, that's such a cute
She's been in the room all this
The
time.
whole
She's a bit of
time.
a, yeah, she's a bit of a barker, really. She's adorable.
Yeah.
She's very calm, but she owns this place. So whoever
This
passes by, and we are on the first floor, she'll just go off of them. And it's all like, okay. Oh
And
my
it must be
God.
so funny for her because you're talking like, but she's like, who are you talking to? Because she
Yeah,
doesn't see
yeah,
that person.
no. No, she's just complete. She just joins, and we take her with us wherever we go because she is so calm. She's like a little presence, and we forget the amazing help animals are in our life. We think we need to go up on the mountain or just we got animals, we got nature all around. We're very fortunate in London because wherever you go, there's always a bit of a green, and you can truly switch off for a moment, and it's a great thing. So, and I'm finding that having GB at home with us, just playing with her, he reconnects us to a sense of calm that is always with us, but we get so distracted. And just being with her, even now as I'm talking, she's there, and I'm like, because there's no conceptual mind in there. They don't, they don't have the narrative. And
they're very much like that children, that we once were. Children outside of mind, that magical, they are like that, so they kind of connect
such a joy
with that. So it's just such a gorgeous one.
Thank you so much.
And dear Antonia, it was such a pleasure and also like an honor to share this. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. And there's just so much, to unpack in what we talked about. And I feel that like we really kept it real, dealt with things that are not fluffy and that are not, fakey or anything. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You are just such a, I don't know, like whenever I think of you, I feel like of a chocolate, like that rich flow, chocolate, like melted chocolate, so rich and so flavorsome and so wholesome and so good for you. So good.
Yes. Yes, bring it on. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you at home. And just keep on making that space around you, keep on moving, and the moment you feel stuck, go off and do something, unstuck yourself. Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, until next time.
And you
See you.
take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.